Hello, this is Brother Anthony, Brother James Anthony Allen in Henderson, North Carolina. I'm coming to you, reading you the book Wardaddy, based on a true story. Wardaddy, reading you the title page or the cover. Wardaddy, spiritual battles in a world of flesh. Wardaddy, a man at war with himself and his family. Inspired by a true story by James Anthony Allen. Me. Chapter 1. Olivia sat rigidly in the high-backed, heavily lacquered wooden chair, asking her beloved Mabel to tell her what really happened that tumultuous day during those stormy times, those unspeakable times of which Olivia never knew the full details. Something inside of her yearned to know what actually happened to her father, what went on inside his head, inside his psyche. She had spoken with his doctors, and they had naturally evoked their doctor-patient privilege. His mother would know. She was the only one who might really know, the one to tell the tale properly. Would she allow Olivia to venture into her dark, shadowy world? Would she tell her the secrets of his lifetime? Or would she take it to her grave, the guardian of a family shame, too deep, too dark to reveal? Olivia needed to know. Her siblings didn't want to talk about it. And when they did speak, they singularly or collectively only danced around what Olivia assumed to be the genuine issues. Could she extract the horrifying details before her grandmother was too old to remember? Before her death? Before she passed into the next realm? What pulled at his mind? Olivia agonized. Was it something real? Had her father imagined something ill-conceived pain? And how was Grandma living with the pain of his loss? Could he have possibly known what was happening to him and his family? Or was it something dark which her grandmother never wanted to acknowledge? Or was she now about to break some mysterious barrier within herself to forge on to a new quiet place at this late age? Mabel Jones, 85, a pitifully frail frame of a woman with a strong, steadfast soul, sat up in the bed staring at her aching, wrinkled hands. These ghoulish, arthritis-twisted instruments once natured her son so tenderly, but also witnessed and abetted a heinous crime. Haunted. Mabel's gray head shook from a touch of Parkinson's disease. Francesca, her great-granddaughter, Olivia's daughter, looked out the window at the stirring wind. A lone bird feeder swung forlornly in the growing gust. The vibrant 4-year-old was mesmerized by the swirling sand and the flying leaves of the other side of the pane. She was bored by the grown-up talk. Her great-grandmother's pain was of little interest to her. She found more interest in the mixture of dust, wind, and leaves. She had flattened her kente clothed doll against the window to show the view. She turned from the window upon hearing the serious shrill of her mother's voice. Grandma, Grandma, Olivia said, shaking her grandmother's shoulder. She startled Mabel out of her daydream. She struggled pitifully to escape the overwhelming pull of memory, to remain in the present, having been momentarily caught between the two. Girl, I remember that day like it was yesterday, she said solemnly. I could have died. I'm sorry for bringing it up. It could have killed me. I would have died for him, you know. She looked at Olivia with tender eyes. The look of a mother holding a newborn baby after being informed that the baby had a terminal illness. No, Willie was a planner. Knew what he wanted. When his life didn't turn out like he expected, he just unraveled. She glared past Olivia, over the window, seemingly right through Francesca. It was a long, hard stare, as if she could see a storm, which neither Olivia nor Francesca could see. But she saw it. She saw something larger, more deadly than the storm that approached. She saw something that had already been. It was the lives, perhaps no, not her life, but the life of her dearest, her most prized. I never saw it coming. Mabel's gaze shifted from the window to her hands. She strummed her fingers on their tips. Everybody thought he was mean like his daddy, like your papa, you know. I still can't believe it, Olivia said in a slow, low voice. No one really explained it to me, what really happened. Papa always said, the old man said, if you didn't plan to go nowhere, you'd be surprised how fast you got there. She paused to think. That's one thing about my Willie. He knew. A uniformed nurse came into the room. She was harried, angry, because Mabel was sitting up in the bed. Mrs. Jones, you shouldn't be sitting up like that. I know, darling, Mabel said. Let the bed do the work, Miss Jones, the nurse said as she inclined the bed and fluffed Mabel's pillow. Grandma, said Olivia. She hesitated on getting her grandmother started on a subject she had evidently avoided for so many years. She had noted Mabel's harsh response to the mere mention of the circumstances surrounding her father's death. Olivia, however, operated out of a sense of urgency. Now, perhaps for information, she was afraid she might already be too late. Would you tell me the whole story from the beginning? The beginning? Mabel stopped to think. Too doting, they said. Mabel looked painfully, slowly, deeply into Olivia's eyes. She spoke softly. What do you think? She was afraid to answer the question herself, fearful of the truth, unwilling to fight the demons. It was one of those haunting questions with which we often live. It was a grave question, one of those, if not handled properly, if not discussed, haunts us to the grave. Sometimes with us following into it. But now she listened for the answer from deep within her bloodline, within the spirit of God's nature that lived inside of her. Olivia pondered the question. She wondered where she was heading with these questions. How could this have anything to do with the events that she wanted to know about? Was Mabel going to a place I don't expect, or was this her attempt to throw me off course? Either way, she thought, I must get her to talk. She must tell me the truth before it's too late. Classic textbook, they said. Mabel trailed off. Now Olivia's eyes had a questioning look, a sincere desire to understand Mabel, her preoccupation. She hoped was about to be appeased. She didn't know what to think about the things to which Mabel had alluded or the questions she asked. Olivia was just hopeful that her trip was not in vain. I'm not quite with her, Olivia thought. I'm not up to speed with where she's going or where she's coming from. Maybe it's her generation, but I'm here and I have nothing to lose. I don't think it was that deal, Mabel continued. He built his own house before he was 30. Did you know that? No, ma'am. They didn't. They did without a long time, until they moved out. They made do. But you wouldn't know nothing about doing without, Mabel said disdainfully. He took good care of y'all. Mabel's face transitioned to a distant place, to a weary time. She remembered her tiresome, dusty days as a sharecropper's daughter, working in the steaming, hot cotton fields, slopping the massive special occasion hogs, that's what she used to call them, hoeing the garden with its assortment of vegetables from sunup to sundown. Then she would have to come to the big house and do household chores. She couldn't wait to get out of there. There never was any time for her. That's what prompted her to leave home. Getting married at an early age, that and Willie Sr. was such a ladies' man. He'd come over to the house swaggering, with nothing but flattery from Mabel and her mama. Dressed sharp as a carpenter's tack, with his Dobbs straw hat jauntily cocked to one side. She never saw him without a suit on until she married him. Fine, just fine. He and his friends. Buddy, Mabel murmured, reminiscing out loud. They used to call him Buddy, she said, giggling sheepishly. Who, Daddy? They used to call Daddy Buddy? Mabel didn't hear her. Grandmama, they used to call Daddy Buddy? Olivia asked, breaking Mabel's concentration. No, darling, Mabel said gruffly. Your papa, they used to call your papa Buddy. Mabel didn't remember Willie Sr.'s tendencies towards violence. She pondered her recurring question of how odd it seemed for Willie Jr. to have such inclinations, though he had such a pleasant disposition. Her lips quivered, moist with the beat of events neither too current nor too distant. In her eyes flowed the long-forgotten emotions of her loving heart. The difficult events of which she would speak were as real to her now as they were when they had actually happened. Olivia wondered if Mabel would have the strength to take her to those horrific events and return safely. Olivia didn't know her grandmother as well as she thought. Papa was too rigid and Willie too soft, she forced ahead, taking her time. That's what they said, you know. What do you think, honey? Olivia didn't know what to think. She only shrugged her shoulders, and after a while, that's why she was here. She wanted to know more about what happened to her father while she was away in college. She never could get anything out of anybody. No, she didn't know what to think. That's why she listened so attentively. I didn't know, Olivia mumbled through pursed lips. Mabel became very animated. Seems like yesterday when Willie became a master mason. I tell him, you can't wait till you're 40 years old to become a promising young man. What you think of most of the time is what you will be. What you think of most of the time is what you'll be. She turned from Olivia to Francesca. And that goes for you too, young lady. Francesca wasn't paying attention. Olivia was surprised how all of a sudden Mabel was animated, full of energy. Mabel leaned forward to put more energy in her voice. Girlie, Francesca, listen to your great-grandmama. Mother. Francesca turned on her heels, not knowing whether she was in trouble for something or not. Yes, Grandma. Great-grandma. Mama. Girlie, you're not too young to start planting those thought seeds in your head. You can be a doctor, you know. Yes, ma'am. Mabel leaned back to relax after seeing that Francesca was paying attention. Planning what you want to be was something Olivia could relate to. She had always planned to be a lawyer, a corporate lawyer. She had planned and worked very hard, and her hard work and planning finally paid off. She was practicing law with the largest corporate firm in New York, a practice group responsible for some of the largest takeovers, mergers, and acquisitions in the country. Olivia couldn't believe her good fortune sometimes, she being a young black woman entrusted with such responsibility. And the money was good too. Her Fifth Avenue apartment and garage Mercedes were testament to that. But despite her success, the great gaping hole left by her father perpetually gnawed at her gut. She wondered whether she was responsible for the string of bad relationships she had been in. The powerful firm partner who tried to fire her when she finally broke free from him. The judge whose horrified wife refused him sex after learning of the affair, and who left her voicemail messages to the nigger bitch and the several sweet, gentle men to whom she cooled despite their eligibility. Mabel settled down into a more solemn demeanor. She knew what he wanted. My boy, he knew. She shrugged. Now this. An uncomfortable drain of energy caused her shoulders to droop. Maybe Willie Sr. was too hard. Maybe he was too soft. Maybe Willie Jr. was sick. I don't know what to think. People at church seemed to think it was a demon. But there was trouble from the start, and it got worse. Mabel's thoughts, as did she, faded into the yesterworld. She sighed deeply as her head weighed heavily upon the pillows. End of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to chapter 2. And with that, I pass. Excuse me.
This has been a production of the Each One Bless One International Network. Each One Bless One. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification, like the video, and share it. Thank you and have a wonderfully blessed day in the Lord Jesus, who is the Christ. Come, Lord Jesus, come. Come, Lord Jesus, come.